that didn't do much. Whoa! Well, my friend Greg has come through once again. On a recent trip to Walmart, he ran across these babies and thought that they would make a good review video. These are Thundercaps by Do All Outdoors, and they cost a little more than $1 each if you find them on sale. They're designed to screw on a standard plastic soda bottle, and then by using compressed air at a pressure of about 100 psi, making a nice, loud, reactive target. And if you don't hit these with your projectile, and you're able to find the cap after the bottle explodes, then you can reuse these over and over. Now, when I first saw these, I really didn't know much about this whole idea of pressurizing drink bottles and using them as reactive targets, but it sure seemed like a good idea. So I did what I always do. I did a little investigation online. And a couple of things I'd like to talk about before we get started looking at this. During my research online, there are several guys talking about do-it-yourself high-pressure soda bottles to use as a reactive target. I'd like to mention just a couple of things about that. The two techniques I saw were drilling a large hole in the cap and using an automobile or automotive valve stem to put in that cap and then putting the pressure in through the valve. The second technique was to drill a small hole in the cap that comes on the soda bottle and then use silicone rubber glue inside and use a blob of glue, let it dry, and then use that as your valve. I think with both of these do-it-yourself techniques, you have to worry about whether the bottle cap is designed to take that kind of pressure, and by drilling the hole through the bottle cap, you are weakening that cap. So I'm a little hesitant to consider a do-it-yourself technique because of safety concerns. So that takes us back to this. Now obviously, even with these purpose-designed caps, you need to wear safety glasses when you're filling the bottles up with pressure. This company advertises that the explosion will be as loud as a shotgun, and I'm really curious about that. The technique for filling these is just using a standard sports ball type of needle, and you can use either a hand pump or you can use a standard compressor. I'm going to use a compressor because I can set the pressure to 100 psi. The company also talks about using flour or cornstarch so you get a little puff, a little smoke effect when the explosion occurs. Powdered chalk would be another option. For today's evaluation, I'm not going to use any filler. I'm just going to put pressure in the bottles, and we want to test these bottles to see how loud they are. What I'd like to do to help make that demonstration is use a suppressed 22 pistol. So I'll be using a suppressed 22 pistol so that we can get the full effect of just how loud these things are going off. These high pressure bottles will go off with a pellet gun or even an arrow. So I'm really excited to see how well they perform. One question I have, besides just how loud they really are we going to have a problem as far as reusing these, because we may damage them when the bottle explodes, we may hit it with a projectile, or when this bottle releases its pressure, it may fly off and we may not be able to recover it. We may not be able to find it unless we're in a wide open field. And that would make the price of $1 to $1.50 each seem a lot more reasonable if we can reuse these over and over again. This package of Thundercaps includes 6 of the caps, and what I'm going to do is use 5 of these 16-ounce bottles and 1 2-liter bottle. From what I understand, the larger bottles are louder. We'll see how that goes. The instructions are pretty straightforward. Screw the cap on tight. Use the pump and needle and go no more than 100 psi. The caps have a nice little O-ring, you can see, so they'll seal tightly, hopefully. We'll use the 1 2-liter bottle and compare the difference in sound between the larger 2-liter bottle and the smaller 16-ounce bottle. Technique is just to use the needle insert, and fill. So we'll go over to the compressor now. I'll put 100 psi in each of these bottles, and we'll take them out to Bullet Creek and see how they do. All right, let's try the Thundercaps now. One thing I would say is when we were filling these up, you really need to make sure that O-ring is cranked down tight. I had one bottle that did leak a little air after I filled it up. You could hear it, and I just cranked it a little tighter, and it worked fine. One other thing, when I was filling these up, I did use glasses and gloves. So right now I don't have ear protection in. I don't know what to expect. Let's see what these sound like. Wow. Okay, they seem like they had a lot of pressure. Okay, these are tight. They still ring. But I don't know if the pressure is just going down enough that they're not exploding. Let's try these two. Let's see if we hit them. Okay, that one's still tight. Okay, this one's perforated. That was no explosion. Disappointed. Let's see if we can get at least one of these to make some kind of sound. That was perforated, perforated, perforated. No explosions. Well, my first attempt at using these Thundercaps was a miserable failure, but it was my fault. What I did is forget to seal around the needle and the adapter on my air gun. And when I was filling up the bottles, I had a lot of air pressure leaking out of here, and I just don't think I got anywhere near the 100 psi that they recommend for this product. So I fixed that. I remedied the problem. I've got my air gun sealed up very nice and tight. And I went ahead and filled up the bottles, and you could tell a big difference. There was no air leaking as I was putting the pressure in the bottles. So I fixed that problem and filled up the bottles, and then I let them set overnight. I was interested to see if we could fill up the bottles in the shop, then put them in the car, go out to the range, and then shoot them at a later time. And this is what I found. Some of the bottles were loose, and they had lost all of their air, and some of the bottles were still tight and had air pressure still in them. And as I started to look at the Thundercaps, it was pretty obvious why. I had, let's see, there's 1, 2. Now this one still actually is holding some pressure, but it's getting ready to let go. So we'll see if this works. This one's tight. And this one's completely given up. So I have 3 out of 6 that when left with pressure in the bottles completely failed, and you have no pressure holding ability. Now the instructions are not very explicit. They don't say don't put pressure in these and let them sit for more than 30 minutes. All they say is don't go over 100 psi. There is a statement on the back of the package in small print that does say do not store bottles that are under pressure. One thing that obviously you need to keep in mind is that you're not going to be able to fill these bottles up ahead of time and have them hold the pressure and then take them out at a later date. So we have half of our caps that have failed by leaving the pressure in the bottles overnight. Even the ones that haven't failed, this is nice and tight. But if you look at the color, you can see right here the orange is starting to lighten up. And that's going to be an area of weakening right there. So obviously this isn't going to last very much longer. So the caps that we still have, we got 3 that we're going to go ahead and test now that we're sure that we're getting 100 psi in the bottles. So now we have the 3 Thunder caps that survived the overnight pressure. That didn't do much. Whoa! Holy moly! Okay, with pressure, that obviously works. Wow! Wow! Oh, it's so disappointing that the other ones failed. Now, interestingly, if we look at the one that just hissed a little bit, let's see if we can see this. Remember, this is the one that it was still tight to feel, but it had already started cracking. So that's 4 out of 6 failures, 2 that were very loud. Okay, now here's one of the caps that also showed the little weakening. It appears tight. Let's just try the small bottle and see how that does. Nope, nothing much out of that small bottle. So here's the small bottle. It had this little weakening, but I put 100 pounds of pressure in it and it seemed real tight. I couldn't hear anything leaking, but I don't know if it's the small bottle that's the problem, but all you get is this little hole and a whiz. Nowhere near the explosion that we got out of the 2-liter bottles. Out of my 6 Thunder caps, I had 2 successes and I had 4 failures. All of the failures were either completely separated or, as in this little one, were certainly weakened. And that obviously had something to do with these not holding the 100 pounds of pressure and not performing. The 2 that did work were very impressive with 2-liter bottles. I purposefully left the wrap on one and took it off of the other, and it didn't seem to make a difference. Both of these caps are intact, although I would say if you take a close look at this one, you can see there's a little weakening and discoloration. So I'm not sure if this is going to be good for another use. So in conclusion, I think that this is an excellent idea, but I have to say that the execution was done poorly. At a very minimum, I think the manufacturer should include in the instructions to fill them up and then use them immediately. But really, I think for $1, $1.50 each, that they should beef up the construction of these caps so that they can be used over and over again. So one thought I have is these caps that have failed by cracking, I could potentially take out this valve. These are glued in with a little glue, but they come undone. And then if we remove the valve, I guess we could consider using this valve in a standard bottle cap. It would require drilling a hole this size, which is certainly smaller than a hole you'd have to drill if you used a valve stem for a tire or rim. You wouldn't have the O-ring, and I was concerned about the strength of the bottle cap, but obviously the strength of these caps leaves a little bit to be desired as well. So that might be something I tried with the ones that have already failed. When I was trying to find information about this product online, I saw one video. The guy had one bottle, one big explosion, scared his wife, scared the dogs, very impressive, but really didn't go into any detail. So I hope you find this information useful in making a decision. So overall, I'm pretty cautious in recommending these. Certainly, if you do try these, fill them up and use them immediately. Use 2-liter bottles rather than the half-liter bottles. And it doesn't seem to matter whether or not you leave the wrapper on. I hope you found the information interesting and useful. If you have any questions or comments, please post those and I'll try to respond to those in a timely fashion. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. That didn't do much. Whoa! Holy moly! Okay, with pressure, that obviously works. Wow! Wow!